Hello, everyone. Matt Bruggeman, Federal Director here at A-LIGN. I'm going to be breaking down today for you guys our top frequently asked questions that we get about CMMC. How can I tell if I will need CMMC? Well, the long and short of it is it will be a contract requirement. So who needs CMMC? Let's start there. CMMC is specific to the DoD supply chain. So what's referred to often as the Defense Industrial Base, the DIB. So any prime or subcontractors of the DoD that are going to be handling sensitive information, such as federal contract information, controlled and classified information, DoD or CMMC requirements will be in place for you. So you might be thinking, okay, I understand the definition. How do I actually know if it's going to be a requirement for me or not? One way that you can look at it is look at your existing contract requirements, especially if this is work that you've been doing historically in that DIB supply chain. Look for certain DFARS clauses. I would look for DFARS 7012 particularly. The long and short of it is if you've been signing contracts that have had DFARS 7012 requirements in them, they've been basically telling you, you have this sensitive data, you need to protect it by implementing NIST 800-171. And then there are other DFARS clauses that were more recently added to kind of help verify by basically saying, hey, you need to self-attest and tell us that you're meeting it in certain ways. Well, the whole reason that CMMC is here is, shocker, we found out not a lot of people were actually meeting it, or they were self-attesting to something and actually weren't really compliant to NIST 800-171. But that is the best determinant to see if CMMC will apply to you or not, is to see if DFARS 7012 is in your existing or previous contract requirements. Because CMMC as a program is really just validating that you're meeting those requirements, right? So it's basically saying, hey, anybody that has those requirements already, we've been going off of more of a self-attestation model historically. It's not really working. So we're going to implement a validation model. That's what CMMC is. It's going to require third-party audits in the case of level 2 certifications to come in and verify that you're meeting those actual requirements. Outside of that, the biggest thing I would say is look at your contracts, look at the data that you guys ingest, if you're a sub, talk to your prime, look at and talk with them. If you haven't already, I'm sure your prime is already asking you about this or mentioning to you, hey, this is going to be a requirement, or hey, I need you to get certified by X date, or get on a C3PO schedule by Y date. But if you're unsure, I always say go back to your clients that may be sending you this data, whether that's the DoD directly, a prime, or a sub of a prime, wherever you're at in the supply chain. Go to the clients and ask them what sort of requirement flow downs are going to come to you and what sort of data they are or are going to be sending you. Can I get CMMC certified if I'm a cloud service provider? Okay, very good question. Yes and no and maybe. So it depends a little bit on what we're talking about. So CMMC and the certification for it, it's very scope dependent, right? So what we look at for CMMC is we're going to be looking at the sensitive data that you're going to be ingesting, the federal contract information, the controlled and classified information. Where does that data flow? Data flow is going to be very critical because wherever that data flows, that's where our scope is going to fall into. So what we need to look at, and really what you as the organization seeking certification needs to look at, is where does that data flow and what is my actual scope? What falls under my information system? Now, if you have a cloud service offering, what would be deemed as a cloud service offering, and that sensitive CUI data is going to be sent into the cloud service offering either by the DoD or members of the Defense Industrial Base supply chain, that is where FedRAMP authorization or equivalency comes into play. You cannot get your cloud service offering CMMC certified because the way that you meet CMMC compliance for a cloud service offering that stores, transmits, or processes the controlled and classified information is you get it FedRAMP authorized or equivalent. Now, if you're a cloud service provider, maybe you have a cloud service offering, but then you have a separate scope. You do other services, or there are other ways that you ingest this federal data into your organization, into a different scope, a different information system. You can still get a different information system CMMC certified. But if the question is specifically, hey, I'm a cloud service provider and I have a cloud service offering that I'm looking to get CMMC certified, the way that you need to get compliant to CMMC is by getting that FedRAMP authorized or equivalent at the moderate baseline. Can I self-attest to level 2 CMMC certification? So within the CMMC program rule, it was outlined three main levels: level 1, level 2, and level 3. Within those, there's different stipulations. Level 1 only requires a self-assessment and a self-attestation to meeting the requirements. Level 2, you think of as needing a certification, and you think of as needing a C3PAO to come in and assess you against that. There was actually a subcategory of level 2 self-attestations, which I think causes a lot of questions and confusion around how do I know if I can just self-attest instead of having a C3PAO come in. And then obviously there's level 3, which adds additional requirements, which the DIPCAC will actually come in and assess you directly for. So to the question, can you self-attest to level 2? Technically, it is possible. But the way that that actually works makes it very, very, very unlikely, statistically speaking, that you are to fall into that level 2 self-attestation category. Basically, for a long while, we were really unsure as to how would it be deemed, like what is the criteria for whether you can self-attest for level 2 or not. The only thing that we could go off of was the DoD's official estimates in their program rule, where they outlined estimated number of organizations that would fall into each of those levels between level 1, level 2 self-attestation, level 2 assessment certification, and level 3. And in there, they estimated about 2% of the overall organizations within the defense industrial base to be able to self-attest to level 2. So again, the probability being very low from the onset. That's why, generally speaking, when anybody's mentioned level 2, we would always assume that means an assessment from a C3PAO to issue your certification. More recently, they did come out with clarity around how would you be able to self-attest, and it speaks to the limited nature of it. The long and short of it is you can only self-attest if you have a specific types of controlled and classified information. And those specific types are if they are not part of NARA's registry on defense organization index groupings. What does that mean? Basically, the NARA registry owns kind of the CUI registry. You can look there to different types of controlled and classified information. The vast majority of everybody in the defense industrial base is going to have NARA defense index grouping CUI. It's kind of inherent to the program. So that includes things like controlled technical information, DoD critical infrastructure security information, and other categories. Those would require you to get an outside third-party assessment from a C3PAO. It is only if you have none of those categories of CUI, and that's why it will be actually contract specific, not contractor specific, because the DoD may say, hey, for this specific contract, this is the type of CUI. It's not in any of these categories, so we do not require a level 2 certification from an outside third party. Again, I would not rely on this. If you're curious, I would go look at those CUI categories, see if you think you're currently or planning to handle any of them outside of it. But again, to be frank, I would not get your hopes up. They have put on there that it will be a very, very, very small minority amount of organizations that will be able to self-attest to level 2. Is the assessment for level 2 certification pass, fail, or can I carry POAMs, plan of actions, and milestones? Kind of both. Let me explain. So at the end of the day, the C3PAO does need to mark all of the 110 practices as met in order to issue a level 2 CMMC certification. So in that sense, it is completely pass-fail. But there is, in the CMMC assessment process, there is allowance for a phase of plan of actions and milestones to be put into place. So what does that actually look like? Well, after the actual assessment takes place, phase 2, if the C3PAO finds that you have not met all the criteria to get a certification, you have not met all of the 110 practices, there is the possibility of entering a 180-day window to put POAMs and remediate those POAMs. How do you meet that requirement? Well, you need to meet at least 80% of the overall controls. There's 110 controls. That equates to 88 practices out of the 110. So if you're meeting at least 88 of them by the time the assessment is over, and all of those POAM items are 1-pointers, there's 1, 3, and 5-point controls. If they're all 1-pointers and you're meeting at least 88 of the overall 110, you can go into that fourth phase of the CMMC assessment process where you get a conditional certification, and then you actually get 180 days to close out those POAMs, re-engage with the C3PAO, have them come in, assess you remediating those items, and then they'll change that conditional CMMC level 2 certificate to a full CMMC level 2 certificate, which is the end goal of any level 2 DIB organization.